sail from the United States to Cuba, so they'll be docking in port. Hopefully the infrastructure is up to par for all that. Leanne Evans is Senior Policy Advisor at Engage Cuba, a lobby group working to end trade and travel restrictions. She joins us from Washington, D.C. Leanne, good evening to you. This is great. Obviously, what's happening is a good thing. I mean, any opening up, any proactive engagement is a good thing. The most often question I'm hearing from a lot of U.S. business, though, is Cuba is likely to be a sponge for American investment capital. What's in it for the U.S.?
Well, I think that's precisely it. There are great business opportunities in Cuba. You mentioned in the hospitality industry, there's also agriculture. There's significant opportunities for exporting agricultural goods to Cuba. It's a country of about, $2 billion of imports annually, and general consensus is that the U.S. could capture up to 80% of that market share. Infrastructure, which you've mentioned, several times in relation to hospitality, is also going to be an area of interest. Renewable energy, there's, a variety of industries and sectors that Cuba is actively seeking foreign direct investment, and where there's an opportunity for American companies to get involved, and it's a two-way street that'll be helping Cuba develop, but also providing a lot of business opportunities for these companies.
Yeah, beyond just the headlines, though, beyond just the sort of the macro picture, Leanne, what are we talking about in the case of Cuba? The interesting thing is, even though the embargo is, decades old, ever since the Bay of Pigs and JFK, there's a lot of human capital, a lot of brain power in Cuba. I remember distinctly when Hugo Chavez from Venezuela, came down with cancer. He went to Cuba for treatment. He didn't go to Beijing, China for treatment. He went to Cuba for treatment. There's a lot of human capital, and their education standards are actually quite amazing considering all these decades of embargo.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's one of the areas where Cuba is traditionally thought of as having made huge strides and huge advancements. So they have the highest literacy rate in Latin America. As you said, there's a lot of human capital. They have great engineers. They have engineers that are sought after in other countries. They've got a fantastic medical system, and they've got some vaccines that are developed. And so that's another area for potential cooperation is in these biotech and pharmaceutical industries and exchanges between medical campuses between U.S. and Cuba. So there's tremendous human capital. There's a lot of drive, and as you said, in terms of being a sponge for American investment, you go to Cuba and you see need for investment everywhere. And so as of now, there obviously are a lot of barriers in place. And sometimes it might take some creativity. Obviously, with the deals that were announced today, like with Starwood, there's processes that need to take place in terms of getting specific licenses, but there have been a lot of openings from the Obama administration in terms of regulations to sort of spur and stimulate some of this investment ahead of time and get in there, get your foot in the door, and start making these linkages that, from our perspective, it's not a matter of if the embargo will be lifted, it's a matter of when. And if you can get in sort of on the earlier side and find a way to get into the market, you'll be set up for success.
Yeah, I kind of hope those 1950s era hot pink Chevrolets don't go away. I mean, it would be disappointing to see the roads all filled with SUVs like just about anywhere else. But Leanne, up till now, it's been, basically ties are not normalized between the two sides. I mean, it's one step toward that, but President Obama has had to, as he has so often during his 2 terms in office, had to rely on his pen and executive power instead of getting the full Congress on board. Discussions involving Cuba often degenerate into, once again, as usual, sadly, ideology. Political prisoners, human rights, even though America does a bang-up business with China, but we'll leave that aside. What is needed to get Congress fully on board?
Exactly. I mean, that's a really good point. Obama can do a lot of things to expand. I don't know how, there's, questions about how much more he can do, but ultimately this is a congressional move. The embargo must be lifted by Congress, and that's part of what Engage Cuba does. So we work with, different groups and organizations to raise awareness. We have state councils and outreach, so we're trying to show that, there are people in Ohio and Louisiana, in Tennessee, in Minnesota, who stand to benefit from getting rid of the embargo. And that is helping to put pressure on members of Congress to show that it is a local issue. This is not a South Florida issue anymore. It's not an ideological issue entirely anymore. So there's a lot of support for ending the embargo, and there have been bills proposed in both the House and the Senate to lift the full embargo. There's also been bills proposed to end the travel ban and to get rid of the restrictions on agricultural finance to Cuba. So there are pieces that are moving, and we're hopeful that we will see some progress. I think this year in Washington is a bit difficult. As you may be aware, there's an election going on, and so it's hard to get things done right now. But we're seeing there is bipartisan support for this. We work a lot with members of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party who see eye to eye on this, and it's rare to have that at this point in time, and that's very encouraging. So it's not. It will take time. We're not normalized now, and it will take a lot of steps to get there. But we're working towards it.
Wow, Republicans and Democrats working together. Imagine that. I'm sure Cuba is going to be strung up like like a lot of other campaign year pinatas, like so many. Leanne, but good luck trying to engage Cuba. Keep at it, okay? Leanne Evans joining us from Washington D.C. There.